Hi guys, Nomis here. Welcome to episode 8 of the Cities Skylines series, where I'm building the city of Nomishavn. Last time, I built a rooftop bar for a nightclub in a shopping center situated on Merchant Lane, which was a super fun build, and I really enjoyed building it and how it came out. I also finished off the Merchant Lane with a national library at the end of it. And lastly, I did a pretty big expansion of residential with some parks and new school, which filled in some pretty big gaps, and this new area also warranted a new tramline. For today's build, I'm doing something completely different from what I normally do, an industrial build. Before I start on the actual build, I want to do some changes to the existing networks around here. The highway going through this area is heading to an island that will also be part of the central part of the city, and I don't want it to ram straight through it, and therefore the plan is to bury it underground. I don't want to remove or redo any of the interchanges, so most of this will be just adjusting the roads down with Move It, adjusting the slope with Network Multitool, and of course upgrading the roads to be tunnels. I had some graphical glitches during this, so I had to cut away a big chunk of this because the footage was just completely unusable. Coming to what today's build will consist of, there will be a mix of industrial uses in this area. Cargo, both in form of a harbor for barges, as well as a freight terminal with a bunch of warehouses and a post-sorting facility as an extension to this area, because I think they fit really well together. Further down will be a small train maintenance facility. I think it makes sense and is important to have a place like this close to the main train station. And lastly, I will also add a small recycling facility. Usually when I build something, I do one small area and detail it up, but for this build I will mostly get the foundations and main assets in for all the facilities before I detail each of them. But I will also go a bit back and forth, because sometimes I realize something I could have added to an area after I thought I was done with it. Usually I try to build like really pretty inner city areas, so doing like an industrial build is something I don't often do because it's really kind of outside my comfort zone. But I do think it's important for City to have them both in terms of the game for like the look, like it creates some variety, but also it's important for the city to actually function, which I also want to do, even though my focus really is on the detail, and as well as in real life areas like this, like getting cargo into the city is really important, and all the uses around it, like maintaining trains, handling trash, recycling and all of that. So I think it's a fun challenge to do, and I think it will look okay in the end. There was a lot of trial and error getting the tracks to behave together in this build, as there was a lot of connections to be made with a number of rail in a tight space. A lot of back and forth, and designing something didn't work and then changing your plans. Most of the trial and error I cut out so you won't go as mad as I did myself. Couldn't get it quite perfect, but tried to get it to a point where it didn't look obviously ridiculous. Tracks are kind of all over the place, going in many directions in places like this in real life, but replicating this in game proved to be a really hard task. The idea is that cargo will come into the city mostly by train or large cargo ships, and then distributed around the city with barges navigating all the rivers. That's why I'm building this area down here, with a few different harbors for barges that can further send out the cargo arriving from the trains right above. I wanted to feel a little gritty and dirty, so lots of stained decals, industrial props, and even some graffiti on the quay walls. I am also using some Industrial Revolution buildings that looks a little more modern than the brick buildings, and then I'm putting some block service fish factories inside them, because I want the district to have a fishing industry down the end, and it's just preparing for when I eventually build some fishing harbors further down the coast. So I'm just turning it off for now, and then I'm just gonna leave them here until I need them. So when I was looking for inspiration for a train maintenance facility, I was just Googling and trying to find a bunch of pictures of different facilities like this. And the reason I placed it here is because I've been looking around a lot of cities on Google Earth, and a lot of them are not too far away from the actual main station in the city, so that's why I wanted it here. Of course, a lot of them are a lot bigger than I had the space for here, so I had to scale it down, but I try to take some inspiration from what is actually included in them. So I saw a lot of them had like just some tracks ending with some power lines and some trains parked, and then all of them had like these sheds where you could lift up the train cars for maintenance. And then you have a lot of industrial props around, a lot of trash, overgrowth. And something interesting I found some places is that you had a lot of just tracks, loose tracks laying around. So that's something I wanted to implement. And also later on I want to include something that I didn't in the first episode, which is actually some train signaling. The reason I didn't include this earlier is because I couldn't really figure out where and how to use them. But when I was looking around at how these actually work, I just decided to just put them before, just a good distance before some junctions where there was some track switches, because I guess that makes sense for them to be there.
Maybe you're not too strange. Maybe you're not too strange. Maybe you're not too strange. Maybe you're not too strange.
For the area around the freight terminal, I just wanted like a really simple cargo area with the freight terminal, and of course I also have the railway warehouse, which I think really fits well in this railyard area. So I'm gonna have a lot of industrial props and of course containers and parked trains with cargo cars and all of that. And then with the post sorting facility next to it, I think it really fits well into the area, because this is something that I've seen in real life in areas that has like cargo terminals with trains coming in and out, and around it it's just going to be a lot of parking and a lot of vans, trucks for the post services. And lastly, I come on to just create a little area for the recycling centers. So I'm just combining two of the normal recycling centers, and then inspiration from real life I've just looked, and it's a lot of times just open concrete space with a lot of different containers for trash. Okay, so that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed the build if you watched this far. I always really struggle with industrial builds as I mentioned earlier, but I think it filled out the area nicely even though it didn't come out perfect. So likes, comments and subscribes are greatly appreciated of course, and it would really help me to grow the channel. And I hope to see you in the next video, and stay tuned for some cinematics. Have a good day.
Shitty train, I got no sun, there's only rain.